Before the trenches of the First World War scarred Europe, before the mushroom clouds over Japan marked the dawn of the nuclear age, there was another war. One that few remember, yet its echoes shaped the century to come. In 1904, a rising Asian power dared to challenge a sprawling European empire. Most believed it would be crushed. Instead, the world watched in disbelief as the underdog struck first, and struck hard. This was the Russo-Japanese War, a conflict born of ambition, pride, and a clash between Old World arrogance and New World determination. At the turn of the 20th century, the map of empire stretched far and wide. Russia, colossal and restless, sought a warm water port and a gateway to Asia. Japan, once a closed and feudal nation, had transformed in a single generation into a modern military state, hungry for recognition and resources. Their ambitions collided over Korea and Manchuria, lands rich in coal, iron, and opportunity. Diplomats exchanged notes, but patience ran thin. Russia stalled, expanded, delayed. Japan prepared. Then, on a freezing night in February 1904, the silence of the sea was broken. Japanese torpedo boats crept through the dark waters of Port Arthur and launched a surprise assault on the Russian fleet. No declaration of war, no warning, just the sudden roar of explosions ripping through steel. The world woke to a shock. An Asian power had attacked a European empire, and not as a victim but as a hunter. What followed was a brutal, grinding struggle across frozen hills and stormy seas. Japanese soldiers marched through Korea and into Manchuria, clashing at Liaoyang and Mukden. The siege of Port Arthur became a nightmare of trenches, artillery, and relentless bloodshed. Tens of thousands fell before the Russian stronghold finally surrendered. Winter offered no mercy. Mud swallowed boots. Frost-bitten hands clutched rifles. Each advance was paid for in lives. But the war was not decided on land alone. Russia sent its mighty Baltic fleet on a desperate 18,000-mile journey to break Japan's hold of the seas. Months of sailing ended in the narrow waters of the Tsushima Strait, where destiny waited. On May 27, 1905, Admiral Togo unleashed his fleet in a thunderous storm of shells and torpedoes. By the time the smoke cleared, two-thirds of Russia's warships lay shattered beneath the waves. It was one of the most decisive naval battles in history, and it sent a shock wave across the globe. For the first time in modern memory, a European empire had been humbled by an Asian nation. The myth of Western invincibility cracked. Colonized peoples from India to Egypt whispered that empires could fall. In Russia, the defeat fed unrest that erupted into the revolution of 1905, a tremor that foreshadowed the fall of the Tsar a decade later. The war ended with the Treaty of Portsmouth, mediated by U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt. Japan gained control over Korea and parts of Manchuria. It emerged not just as a regional power, but as a force the world could no longer ignore. Yet victory also planted seeds of ambition that would grow, decade by decade, until Japan's empire collided with the world once again in the Pacific War. Today, the Russo-Japanese War is often a footnote, overshadowed by the world wars it preceded. But its lessons whisper across history. It marked the dawn of modern warfare in Asia: trench lines, machine guns, and total mobilization. It redrew the map of influence, showing that the old order could be challenged, and sometimes, defeated. Had Russia crushed Japan, would the First World War have erupted the same way? Would Asia's destiny have unfolded as it did? Or did this forgotten war quietly set the gears of the 20th century in motion? History does not always shout. Sometimes, it begins with a single strike in the dark, and a world that is never quite the same again. What do you think? Should this war be remembered as the true spark of modern conflict? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more history they never taught you.